Nigerian airliner Air Peace has dismissed as false the media reports alleging a safety breach by the company in the United Kingdom. According to a statement by Air Peace, the UK Civil Aviation Authority wrote the airliner after their statutory ramp inspection in April to request clarification on its use of the electronic flight bag, to which it got explanation and the matter was resolved.
Well, Air Peace now says it's wrong to say that it lacks approval for the EFB. Air Peace further adds that it received approval from the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority and that all its Boeing 777 aircraft are certified to operate with EFBs. Well, it also described as incorrect the claims that its B777 aircraft lacks iPad mounts and charging ports in the flight deck. We're joined now by Captain Roland Iyayi, who is the CEO of TopBrass Airlines. He's also a member of the Airline Operators of Nigeria. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The moment this broke, it was quite shocking for a lot of people that only, April, that, this carrier started operating the Lagos-London route. And we're wondering exactly what is this, what are these infractions allegedly committed by Air Peace? How grave are they if they are really true?
Thank you very much. I've actually taken time to review the UKCAA report itself. Mm-hmm. And first of all, I need to say, I'm not speaking for Air Peace. I'm speaking for the industry. Right. A ramp inspection, it needs to be understood, is akin to having a VIO stop a vehicle on the road and ask to see certain things, whether or not you're compliant with the regulations. Right. As required, the UKCAA did what you call a ramp check, a series of ramp checks over a period of time on Air Peace. And on one of the several ramp checks, apparently they had observed that the electronic flight bag used in the cockpit for navigation purposes, they felt there was no approval for it. But incidentally, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority actually has approved the use of the electronic flight bag in the 777s operated by Air Peace. Mm-hmm. And that is contained in the op specs attached to the airline's air operator certificate. Actually, they have a copy of that in the cockpit library, which is kept in every aircraft operated by the airline. Mm-hmm. A copy of that is usually in the cockpit. Well, as it turned out on the day, apparently they could not cite it. So it was written out as an infraction. And as required, the UKCAA wrote to Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority indicating the observations they've reached, they found out, to ask the UKCAA to ensure that there was compliance. The Nigerian CAA rather, to ensure there was compliance. Mm-hmm. And of course, by the time the CAA was notified in Nigeria about the fact that there was an approval issue on the EFB, it was clearly stated that there was an EFB approval, which was shown to them. Mm-hmm. So that element of that particular supposed infraction was closed. The issue of not having a mount for iPads, iPads are used in a cockpit to sort of reduce crew workload, because on each iPad, operated by a crew member, you have all the navigational charts. Ideally, if you wanted to carry all the navigational charts for each section of the airspaces the aircraft will traverse, you're talking a huge volume. Right. So to make it easy, airlines all over the world today use iPads, and they load in the electronic versions of those Jefferson charts on the iPads. Air Peace has the same approval. They have mounts in those airplanes, and they have charging ports. Because you wouldn't have the mounts without the charging ports. Right. But of course, at the point at which the CAA authorities, ramp checked the aircraft, it had concluded the flight. At the point at which they, stepped into the cockpit, the crew were about, disembarking themselves. So they had removed the mount of one of the cockpit positions, because each pilot carries his own iPad. Right. So to that point, it was like, oh, you don't have it. I said, well, we do have it. But of course, at this point, the flight had been concluded. So it was like, okay, we didn't see it. So assuming they had ram checked them before departure,
Right.
that would have been sin. So it was closed. The other infraction basically is a discretion of the pilot. The aircraft landed. Usually, sometimes the air traffic controller, depending on the traffic, could give you certain clearances. Which,
Yeah, talking about the captain's choice of runway exits.
That's correct.
After landing.
That's correct.
Right.
So I mean, if the tower, for instance, gave you a sort of a clearance to land and hold short or something like that, then if you accept it as a crew, then it's, you're required to do that, because essentially the reason you're given that sort of instruction is to ensure that the operational efficiency of the airport is kept. However, in this particular situation, the pilot landed. I'm not too sure what the clearance he was given was. However, he landed and decided to use pretty much the entire length of the runway to roll out before exiting the runway. Now, the complaint is that by doing that, it actually impacted adversely on the operational efficiency of the airport in terms of the runway use.
Right.
And I think from the statement I read, Air Peace addressed that by taking on the crew particularly to say, look, these are the things the airport says we should do, therefore we would comply by that. And I think that issue also has been resolved. And I must say this, it's the pilot's
Is this
discretion.
an attempt to frustrate Air Peace?
No,
because
no,
of,
no,
okay,
so
please,
you were
land
saying
on
something
the
about the
points.
discretion.
Yes.
No. When a pilot decides to do whatever it is upon landing, the primary concern is the safety of his flight.
Right.
He may have been given a particular clearance by the control tower. If he obliged to it and then found subsequently that he might not be able to, the primary concern is to ensure that that flight is safe. And if in trying to do what the tower has instructed him, he would undermine the safety of his operations, he decides to do otherwise. So the thing is, ultimately, whether or not a pilot decides to do on ground what he's told, will be determined to a large extent by the safety of his operations. And I think that was a concern of the crew. I'm not sure what the situation was, but in the context of what role the crew plays in such situations, he has the final say.
Captain Iyayi, I'm excited that you're here. It is you who's here, someone who's got, experience about this.
Yeah.
Because now I'm looking at it this way, because those who are carrying out these checks are also experts. So one wonders why it becomes almost difficult for them to understand this discretionary aspect of it, because that's one is something that any novice, someone who doesn't have an idea, will think that, they told the pilot, do this. He went this other way, especially now they're talking about exit. So how do we resolve this? Because the news out there, it doesn't look good for the carrier. It looks as if the pilot has blatantly disregarded the tower in this case.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of people do not understand, the dynamics of an airline operation, and in fact, the context in which pilots or whoever it is will take a decision. What the UKCAA did to Air Peace is the same thing the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority can do to any of the foreign carriers operating into Nigeria. And if they do find violations or infractions, they're mandated by the ICAO requirements to report that to the Civil Aviation Authority of the host country, of the foreign airliner. So I don't think there's anything untoward in doing the RAM check by itself. However, when you look at the sort of supposed infractions, these are not anything to undermine the technical reliability or the safety of the particular operations in question. So I think it's been overplayed. And I can guarantee you, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority has had reason to conduct RAM checks and found stuff on international airlines operating into Nigeria, but it has never been made public to the media. So I believe to some extent the idea that this was made public could be an attempt to undermine the airline itself, but again, we're not too sure about that. So I wouldn't want to flog that issue. Having said that, I don't see those issues raised by these supposed violations as extreme or very severe or grave. There are things you call nice
by
to
global
have.
standards, by any standards,
By global standards.
not by Nigerian standards.
By global standards.
Right.
I mean,
Because
the
it makes
things
you want to question how stringent, Nigerian operations are when it comes to this.
Again, let me
standards.
even give you a simple
Right.
example. The particular aircraft in
Let's
question.
be quick.
Very
quick.
Yeah.
The 777 has, from the manufacturers, 240 minutes of ETOPS. But the Civil Aviation Authority in Nigeria will not allow Air Peace to operate 240 minutes ETOPS. ETOPS is just allowing you to have extended operations over water.
Right.
Except of course you have landing sites close by.
Right,
so
okay.
those are things that they do by way of, we call it overregulation, but they're just erring on the side of safety.
Okay, Captain Roland Iyayi, CEO of TopBrass Airlines and also member of the Airline Operators of Nigeria. Many thanks for coming on Newsline.
Thank you very much for having me.